There's nothing underneath there. There's actually this mesh plastic piece that sits on the top over a water reservoir. So when you fill them from the fill tube, it fills up that reservoir on the bottom, and you can't overdo it because at the front, if you can see this little notch at the bottom, that's an overflow. So once it's filled up, it'll start to spill out that way so that the water reservoir is at exactly the level that it needs to be in. So we have already done a first step here. We dumped in about half the soil. And you just want to use a good basic soil. It would take like 2 bags of like the garden compost blend because you need 2 cubic feet of soil to fill up an EarthBox. You can reuse the soil for a couple of seasons. You'll typically have to take out the spent fertilizer and replace a little bit of it to re-enrich it, but you can use a lot of the soil in a subsequent year. So it's not like you have to redo it each and every time. But we put a bag of soil in here, and we also mixed in the lime. So we're using, since this is an EarthBox we've used before, we're using a replant kit, which comes with the lime, the fertilizer, and the mulch covers, which will show you what all of those things are as we plant it up, for planting up the box each season. If you were to buy an EarthBox kit, it comes with the box. I believe they have casters, although there were some weird supply issues with those at some point. The covers for it comes with lime, fertilizer, everything but the soil and the plants that you're going to use for planting up the EarthBox. So what we've done as the first step, we put in that 1 bag of the soil, and then what we did is we compacted it down in 2 of the corners. So we kind of used our fists a little bit and pushed it down. And there's 2 points underneath that, in that reservoir, where the water makes contact with the soil. So there's 2 corners where the soil's down in there, and that's where the water makes contact with the soil. Now what's really cool about the EarthBox is it's a wicking action that draws the water up into the soil and into the root zone of the plant. So as the soil dries out, that wicking action pulls the water up into the soil to get into the root zone and deliver just what the plants need in terms of water. So that is where it gives a lot of forgiveness, is in the watering. The second thing we did is after we poured in that 1 bag of soil, is we mixed in, Maddie, will you hold up the empty bag? Yep. So we poured in I think it's about a pound of lime. So we put lime in the bottom. Lime sweetens the soil. It's calcium carbonate, so it also helps, like I said, with tomatoes and other vegetables, to keep them from having blossom end rot. So this was dolomite lime. We mixed that entire packet into this bottom section of the soil there. Okay, you can put that down now. So now we're going to fill it up with some more soil. Can you start filling with some soil there, Maddie? So now we're filling with a little bit more soil. And now we're going to do the next step. And this is the other forgiving part of the EarthBoxes, is that they give you a little bit of forgiveness on feeding, because you can do the feeding all at once and you don't have to do it again. And so what we're going to do, can you make a little trench down the middle? So with some soil, just one trench, yeah. Look at that teamwork. So we've made 1 trench down the middle here, and now what we're going to do is we're going to pour the bag of fertilizer that comes with the EarthBox in here. If you're replanting EarthBoxes in different years, you can use something like our Kirby's Special, our Kirby's 848. Or you can also use the tone fertilizers to fill the box. So you can use a different kind of fertilizer if you want as well in subsequent years when you're doing the EarthBoxes. So now we've got the fertilizer in there. We're going to add a little bit more soil to the top for 2 reasons. One, we had a question about squirrels and critters. What do they love? Fertilizer. And our dog does too, yes. Yeah, we fertilized our garden yesterday and our dog decided to have breakfast out in the garden. Fortunately, it was organic. We figured it was good for her. I'm kidding. She didn't eat that much. We stopped her. Okay. So we're doing 2 things here. We're covering the fertilizer so that critters can't smell it quite as strongly. Hopefully that will deter them from getting into it. And then you're going to make a nice mound, girls, kind of mounded in the center there. And what we do with that is when we're watering the EarthBoxes, we are going to water 1 time over the top to soak the soil, kind of get that wicking action of charge. After that, we're not going to water again over the top. We're only going to water from that fill tube. But what happens in Florida once we get to like April, May, June? It rains a lot, right? And so if it rains too much, it would soak the EarthBox. And so when we put the cover that'll go on the top of this, we want this little mound here so that as it rains, that water can sheet off and go off of the box. And so that will allow it to not get filled with water from the rain. Just a second. It is a lot of dirt, yes, 2 cubic feet of dirt to fill it up. But we've got to have plenty of dirt for our roots to grow nice and sturdy in. So the EarthBox instructions will tell you the different orientations that each vegetable is planted in. They are all a little bit different. If you're doing tomato plants, they only recommend 2 plants, and you're going to do them on one side of the box. In this case, we have opted, I let them both pick one, so we opted to do peppers and bok choy. And in this case, the EarthBox says you can do 6 of these plants. So we're going to do, in this case, 3 on one side, 3 on the other, and that's why we did the fertilizer strip down the middle. Sometimes the fertilizer strip will be to one side or the other based on the particular orientation of the vegetables that you're using. So are we ready to plant? Okay. Yeah, why don't we just do 1 and 1? I think once they see us do 1, they'll kind of get the process, right? So we're going to plant 1 of these. Abby, why don't you get a bok choy first, and we'll do that. So we're going to plant a bok choy in here. We're going to plant them just the same way that we would if we were planting them in a garden bed. We're just going to move a little bit of soil out of the way, enough to make it level with the soil level that we've chosen here. Nice and gentle with the little plants. Here, can I give it a squeeze for you? So to get them out of the 4-pack, so kind of squeeze the roots a little bit, and then it'll pop out kind of nice. There we go. We don't need to loosen the roots on these little tiny plants. You know, when we plant landscape plants, we often talk about raking the roots around the side, making sure stuff's pointing outward. We don't need to do that. These are so young, they're barely holding together half the time. I think your hole's great. Put it on. Oh, you got yours out already. Okay. There we go. And then we're just going to move that soil back, tamp it down real lightly, just make sure that we don't want to put any new soil over the top. We just want it to be at the level where it's at. Maddie, why don't you do yours over here? Right here. You can do it right here. All right, so Maddie's going to plant a little sweet banana pepper for us there. And so what we're going to do, and what's kind of cool is you can mix different vegetables within the EarthBox. So in the case of tomatoes, it's 2 plants. You're probably just going to do all tomatoes. But for some of the vegetables, you can do 6, 8, or even 10 of different crops. I've done one time where I planted corn on one side and beans on the other, and it was kind of cool. Is I think you could plant like 10 corn plants and then 10 bean plants that were able to grow up them. Little symbiosis together, another companion planting. The corn acted as like the trellis for the beans. So now that we've got our plants planted here, I'm not going to do the rest of them today. Well, we'll do in front of you guys. So we would have 3 plants on one side, 3 plants on the other. At this point, we would water everything in really well, again, to just give that wicking process a charge, soak it through. After we did that watering, then it would be time for our mulch cover. And in my years of doing this demonstration, I have learned that trying to put the mulch cover on in front of an audience never works. It's awkward and weird. Do you cut the holes first and then plant, or do you plant and then cut the holes? I don't know. I've never figured out a good way to do it. Exactly. So what we do, this is just a stretchable cover. It has 2 colors, right? Black on one side, white on the other. In some climates, you would use the black side up for like the winter to keep the soil temperature up. That's not really an issue here in Florida so much. We don't have issues with soil freezing. So I typically use the white side. That's going to reflect the sun upwards, which can help the plants by amplifying the sun a little bit. They get some sunlight from the underside as well, but it also helps to keep the soil temperature down when we're getting into the mid-90s and it's really hot out. So what we'll do is, in this case, we're going to have them all planted first. We're going to cut 6 holes into our cover that match where those plants are, and then we're going to stretch it out over the top. Can you kind of hold one side there? And so if I had a hole in there, then I'd kind of reach through, get that plant through, and it takes a little bit of adjustment. That's why I said sometimes I've put the cover on, cut the X's, and planted within. That kind of works, but then you're sort of reaching in and under. It's awkward either way. But you do want to get that top on after you've watered it in thoroughly from the top. Get the cover on, then you can fill the water reservoir, and your EarthBox is ready to go. So the big forgivenesses that you get are you don't have to water as often because you only have to fill it up once or twice a week. And then the fertilizer, once you've done this strip of fertilizer, that is enough to feed it through an entire harvest season. You can, if you want to boost the plants a little bit, do a liquid fertilizer like the Fox Farm Grow Big to just add to the nutrients that they have and give them a little bit of a boost. There's not really pest protection. I mean, it's not like it's not a magic box against pests and disease, but the plants are sturdy and they grow fast, so that seems to limit the amount of disease and pest issues that you have. And as well, if you use the casters, they're kind of standing up a little bit off the ground, and that helps keep some of the pests away. Now, disease and things are spread by wind, and some bugs spread by the wind as well. So you may see those on there. So scouting would be the same. Keep an eye on those plants once a week or so. Check on them, especially in the mornings. That's when a lot of insects are active. So check on them in the morning to make sure, and you would treat the same way with the different products that I showed you there.